Hello, I'm Brian Hansel, and I really appreciate you taking a few minutes to learn a little bit more about your soil. I think the exciting thing we're going to talk about today is soil health and how do we actually put life back in your soil. And for us, we really like to describe that as a journey because it took a lot of time to get to where we are today. So over the last 30 or 40 years, all our farming practices, every little piece of it is kind of chipped away and reduced the life in our soil. And we're committed to helping farmers see the journey forward. So for us, what if in 3 years you had a farm that you couldn't even recognize? And I ask that in a way because we think we have a plan to help you start rebuilding it. And what I mean by that plan is, imagine in 3 years if you were using 30% less inputs. If you had an improved stand count so you could actually buy less seed, you had reduced insect pressure, you had reduced fungal pressure, you had faster, easier planting, you had more stress resistance. You had more root mass, which actually then was converting into organic matter, and you had reduced tillage. Ultimately, all these great things rolling up into a better yield. I mean, how would that look? Historically, what has been offered, and what people have discussed when they're talking about time to regenerate your soil has been stop tilling, add some cover crops, and let nature take its time. And that's great, and ultimately there's been a lot of success, but most conversations I've had with farmers, that's a 3 to 5 year plan, and at the end of it, you start to see the results, but between here and there, it's a pretty rough road. And a lot of people just aren't willing and haven't made that move. So we think there's a different alternative. So what if you actually started by adding life back to your soil? And then you start to see your soil change. And as that soil starts to change and open up and perform differently, you now realize, the reasons I used to till aren't there anymore. So I'm actually reducing my tillage because I don't need to. And then you find that you've got your biology growing, you got your soil working. Maybe now I add cover crops. So we think there's just a different approach. So how does this happen? Well, it really happens by adding microbes. When I say life, I'm talking about the living life in your soil, which are microbes. And what is their role? What do they actually do for you? So we're going to spend a lot of time on this, and I'll walk you through it. But to really think about it, first and foremost, is they, in a healthy environment, will outcompete your plant to eat your input. So as you're putting down fertilizer, they're actually going to immobilize that and consume it. And that's great because it's inside of a bug and it's not going anywhere. The other nice thing is those bugs will actually move to the root zone. So they're going to live where you want them. That fertilizer is going to be in the right place, but it's not available to the plant. So there's a whole other piece of this where you need to establish the food chain to release those nutrients and actually make them available. But as that happens and you get that biology moving and you get those things happening, you're going to see your organic matter improve. So microbes play a huge role in your soil. There's a lot of really good things they do. One way I like to relate it so you can kind of get a sense for this, because we can all relate to our own body, right? So in our own body, we've got a digestive tract, we've got an immune system. Well, our soil is that for our plants. So for us to digest food that we need microbes. We've got more microbes in our digestive tract than we've got cells in our body. The soil needs that level of microbes to do the same work for the plant. In the same way you think about immune systems, if you've got more good guys than bad guys, you can fight disease, you can push back. We're in a place where we've reduced that life in our soil, and what our product can help do is bring that back. So we're going to help build the good guys in your soil. So how did we get here? Like, what were the things that happened that have reduced life in our soil, right? We didn't do it intentionally, but the reality is there are certainly things we control. There's the things we put down on the soil. If you think about all the insecticides, pesticides, fungicides specifically are meant to kill fungi. Fungi, as you'll learn, are one of the critical microbes in the equation. So we have definitely done things that through our own actions have done it. But there's things like flooding, right? You never really think about it, but in an environment where you have flooding, a lot of these bigger bugs are actually oxygen-based. So if they sit underwater for 5 or 7 days and it dries up and you can smell that swampy smell, that's dead biology. So you need to put that back. And there's ever been a good way to do that. Clearly tillage, a lot of conversations have gone on about tillage. If you take bugs that should be under the soil and roll them to the surface, a lot of them are going to die. So there's a lot of things that have occurred that have gotten us to where we are. So what have we done? We've created a product called Bio 800. That's 800 plus species of a biodiverse group of microbes that we put back in your soil. So they do a lot of really great things. They're clearly replenishing what nature wanted to put back. But the easiest way to think about it is it's a probiotic for your soil. So again, just like if you need to take a probiotic to improve your gut health, that's what we're going to do for your soil. So to understand really what's in our product, so I talk about 800 plus species. The smallest and fastest growing of those is bacteria, right? And most farms, when we walk into them, they're bacteria dominant. And I'll get into that in a little bit later, but they do some really important things. They are the bugs that most predominantly are going to outcompete your plant to eat your inputs. They are going to go consume those inputs and hold on to them. But when they do that, they also make the plant feel hungry. So that actually helps induce rooting and does other good things. But you have all this nutrient held and you don't have it available to the plant. So just as one element of this, think about nitrogen, the chemistry of a bacteria is 1 nitrogen to 5 carbons. You don't need to understand what that means other than that's a lot of nitrogen for very few carbons. So they're very nitrogen dense and they can hold on to it. And when they're holding on to it, the plant can't get to it. So we need to then get the predators involved. So as we move up that food chain to fungi are super important in our system. They do a lot of really good work. They're the things that actually will attach to the root, create a whole web that will go and explore the soil beyond the root to go find nutrients and bring it back. So they're that white mossy stuff that you see. But in addition to that, they're also natural predators of bacteria. So they eat the bacteria. Their body chemistry is 15 to 1, right? So when they eat that bacteria, it's toxic to them. So they got to get rid of 2/3 of that nitrogen, and they get rid of it exactly in the root zone where the plant can uptake. So it's nature starting to unlock some of these nutrients that the biology is consuming. You move up the food chain one more to protists. So protists are the largest, slowest growing, but most aggressive in terms of being predators. They can eat 10,000 bacteria a day. Their body chemistry is 30 to 1. So when they eat that bacteria, they have to release almost 90% of that nitrogen back into the system to where the plant can uptake it. So again, what we're after here is this nature system of delivering those nutrients to your plant. So as you put them down, we consume them in a smaller biology, and then the predators step in and release. And that circle is what we're trying to rebuild. And I would tell you that most farmers that we run into when we first engage them, this system is broken. We just don't have all the pieces of that puzzle working. So let me just give you an example. So this is a study that we point to quite a bit. It's on nitrogen. There's 230 individual scientists that went out and studied how do our plants actually get nitrogen. So we had one guy who said, I'm not going to do all that field work. I'm just going to pull it all together and get to the punchline. And the punchline is that 36 to 42% of the nitrogen that your plant uptakes this season is actually from what you put down this fall or spring. Right? So 40% actually comes in through your roots from what you put down. 60% comes from soil organic nitrogen turnover, which is bugs eating bugs. So imagine that system that I just talked about, if it's broken. So you've been putting your fungal treatments down and you've knocked back your fungal activity, so you don't have a lot of fungi, you don't have protists. So now you don't have an efficient way to get 60% of the nutrients to the plant. The only thing you're left able to do is over-fertilize. You have to put more down so the plant has enough available that can actually access from the roots. You take it a step beyond nitrogen, we talk about P and K, right? So most farmers, certainly in the upper Midwest, we're talking about, probably 1,000 years of P and K in the top 6 inches. But the problem is it's not available. So you can look on your soil test, you can see the available and it's really small. You look at the bank and it can be very big. So we have thousands of years of P and K sitting there. Every year we turn around, we put more down. The problem is when you put it down, the majority of that gets locked up and goes into the bank. So the only thing that can successfully start to unlock that is biology. So we have the biology within our product that can solubilize P and K and start making it available to the plant. So if you start adding up all these pieces and we start talking about our recommendations for fertilizer, we go back to our removal rates. So if you think about corn as one crop, when you actually harvest that corn and you take it out of the field, you're taking about 0.66 pounds of nitrogen with you. Most farmers we're talking to are closer to 1 pound of nitrogen per bushel. Maybe some are at 0.9 or 0.8. But again, in an efficient system, there's no reason you shouldn't be down below 0.7. Right? So we rebuild that cycle. We're getting that all working for you. So if that nitrogen is in your soil, it can naturally get to the plant because the biology can bring it to the plant. Now we're at that level. You talk about P and K, first year, we know our biology is going to do some work in starting to release it. So typically our farmers will reduce at least 20% of their P and K year one. And those combination of things typically offset the full cost of our product out of the gate. So when you go to planting, you're already profitable. But as you move forward from year 1 to year 2, you're actually continuing to build the populations. We have more and more population or physical bugs across that diversity. So we're unlocking more. So you'll see greater improvements in terms of reductions in P and K in year 2 and even more in year 3. So there's a real opportunity to drive that efficiency. And a byproduct of all this is roots. So as we have a motivated plant, because our biology has done its work, we're going to see heavier rooting. We consistently see deeper, longer, heavier root mass. Now, that's obviously intuitively good for the plant. So it's going to help really create that successful plant that's going to give you what you need for yield. But the other part of this is after you harvest, the more root mass you have in the soil, the more organic matter that you can naturally create. So 2.3 times easier for our biology to convert roots into organic matter than it is anything above the ground. So it's just more difficult to take that organic material from above the ground and make it into good topsoil. So roots matter both while the plant is living and after it passes. So I just want to touch on a few key points here in terms of reasons why you should be thinking about Bio 800. And this first example here really shows early emergence. To me, this is a really powerful picture to give you a demonstration of what biology does for you. So this is a first-time user of our product, had a 16-row planter. 8 rows of it were starter only. The other 8 were starter and Holganix. Again, right down the middle of the field, we had Holganix product emerge 2 full days ahead of the check. This was the biggest control we could find. If you look at that small plant, that really represents that you had a seed setting in that starter. It felt like it had all the food it needed, right? So it wasn't aggressive about rooting. On the other side, where the Holganix was, our biology that goes into the tank alive, hits the ground running, actually consumed all that input, all that food around that, and had a very motivated plant. So you saw a really deep root start to occur, and everywhere that center root touches bacteria holding on to nitrogen, that's what stimulates root hairs. So the presence of root hairs gives you the visual that you've got good biology. So again, that early emergence, better stand count, all those things happen within days of the first application of our product. As you move through the season, because you have biology that's getting that soil to really move and percolate, you're opening up, you're giving room for those roots to get into the soil deeper. It's highly motivated because it's looking for food. So again, we consistently see higher roots, deeper roots, and over the course of the season, you're then going to have better water infiltration. You're going to hold your water capacity better. And so like in that deep summer heat, when all the corn's starting to curl up, we tend to stay wide open because we're just not feeling the stress because you've got those roots and that water working for you. The other piece of this is like insect resistance. So a healthy plant has a better Brix or sugar level, and insects really don't like that. So if we go into our beans and we've done half the field with Holganix and half without, you'll see that the bugs will go to the weaker plants on the non-Holganix side and stay clear of the Holganix because of that. So again, there's just so many individual pieces of this puzzle that you'll see through the course of a growing season. So after we've harvested, now we move to the second application. So like I said, everything about the spring was about that nutrient uptake and making sure we were supporting the plant through its growth. Once we've harvested, now we've got all that debris on top of the ground, and we've got all that root matter underneath the ground. We need to now convert that to healthy soil. So I talk about the spring being profit, the fall being legacy. We're building that legacy of the longevity of that farm being healthier and healthier over time. So our fall product goes down right after harvest. Again, it's everything that you need to actually decompose a corn stalk. So if you think about the outside shell of any grass, but of a corn stalk specifically, it's cellulose and lignin. The only thing that can actually decompose that is fungi and protists, and that's in our product. So when we come to the field, we're putting down all the biology you need to do the decomposition, and we're bringing the food sources, including slow release nitrogen. So that goes on in the fall. It really starts to break things down. And why is that important? So if you think about what's on top of the ground, corn, for every 40 pounds or bushels of corn, you actually have about a ton of stover. So 200 bushel corn, you got 5 tons of stover. At 17 pounds a ton, that's 50 or 60 pounds of nitrogen sitting above the ground. If we can get that completely broken down and back into the soil, that's ready for the plant the next year. That's true for your soybeans, that's true for your wheat, it's true for anything. So we go down on that fall cover, we get it broke down. We're also working underneath the ground to get those roots converted and getting those broke down and turned to organic matter. So again, the beauty of this product is you'll see it almost immediately in days in the field. It'll start to break things down, but it really is truly decomposing that and making it something that can be absorbed back into the soil. So we got a couple pictures here I want you to take a look at. So this is a field, southeast Iowa, over 200 bushel corn, 3 weeks after harvest. Right after the combine ran, we sprayed breakdown on one field. We did not on the other. We ran vertical till over both. You can see this top picture that, again, that's pretty traditional. That's what you tend to see. On the bottom, again, that was 3 weeks after harvest, and you know, it's almost completely broken down. You see the soil coming up through. If you look at that picture in the spring, this is the same exact field, and with no additional work, no tillage, no field cultivating, we was ready to plant straight into. So again, I had a person walk onto this field and actually think it was a bean field the year before, because it really had broken down the debris to that degree. So it's just really powerful and incremental to having a clean field. At least in our area, a lot of anhydrous is pulled. And when you have anhydrous gnites trying to run through a field, how do you, is that soil open? Will it actually accept the knife? Will it seal up nicely afterwards? How fast can you run? Can you run early in the day, late at night? That's what we see with Holganix. So in this picture, you'll see that you've got a really clean cut through with the knife. We had the neighbor across the street. He was clumping up. He was calling, how are you guys getting your knives to seal? How's this working? I can't get it to go. And again, the difference is our soil porosity was open. We actually had Holganix working for us. It had broken down all that silver so it wasn't clumping up. And then this is the same field in the spring. So we were ready to plant into it, didn't have to field cultivate, didn't have to till. So all these little pieces of the puzzle really add up to success. So how do we put it down? What's the application? So the application in the spring is 0.5 gallon per acre. It can go in furrow or it can go broadcast spray. We like it as close to planting as possible. So it can be, obviously in furrow, the timing's perfect. It's right at the time of the seed. You can go a couple weeks before. If you've got a pre that you're putting down, you have a burn down, you can go a couple weeks afterwards. But again, we want it with as much water as you're willing to put down. So if it's in furrow, 3 to 5 gallons. If you're broadcast spraying it, 10 to 15 gallons. But again, that's at planting. The fall, as soon after the combine as possible, right? The more warm days, the better. We're going to get more and more activity. We're going to get that biology working for us. Again, that's going to be broadcast sprayed, and we want as much liquid as we can so we can kind of soak it in. So we're asking for 15 gallons for that. Our product is manufactured in Southeast Iowa, so in West Point, and it is a fermentation process. So one of the things we're most proud of is this is a live product. We literally take the biology, we bring it to life, we feed it, we grow it up to population levels. We then take a DNA fingerprint of that to make sure that we maintain our quality. As soon as it gets done with the fermentation cycle, we put it into totes, we put it into refrigeration. We put it at 37 degrees. That lets everything calm down, stop growing, and stop eating. So we hold it in cold storage. You don't have to worry about that. But when we ship it to your farm, you now have 6 to 8 weeks to actually use it, because it will come back to life as soon as it comes out of refrigeration. It will start to grow and multiply, and it will start to eat. So at some point, it's going to run out of food and oxygen, and it's going to die because it is a living product. So we do have a shelf life. For us, the good news is that's almost 2 months. So one time you get it on your farm, you have plenty of time to get it down. You don't have to worry about refrigeration. We just ask that you try to keep it in your shed versus out in the direct sun, although it'll show up with a nice wrap on it, which will protect it from the UV. So I hope that all made some sense to you. But one of the things that's most confusing is the marketplace right now. Right now, there's over 400 companies that are actively walking into your shop telling you that they've got a microbial product. So the biologic marketplace has exploded. It's interesting, we didn't make this particular slide, but if you look at it in the intersection of all the different types of microbial and biologic products, right in that center, there's one product. It's Holganix. So Holganix is the one that has the full biodiversity, all the functionality, and really does so many things for your soil. Everybody else is coming at it from a different tack. They're trying to create a single product to do a single function, and most of those are created from some subset of about 25 bacteria. So again, we have 1,000 different species, 400 plus bacteria. We have over 200 fungi, 70 protists, over 100 beneficial nematodes doing all the things that I've just described. Our competitors are coming to you with 4, 6, 8, 10 bacteria saying they'll do the same thing. So again, I think common sense will lead you to believe that, again, we are doing more because we're actually bringing nature to you. But I think this chart shows, quite honestly, how it's so confusing in the market, and hopefully we can help give you some tools to make better decisions. I started this whole conversation talking about a journey. So what's the destination? Like, where do we want to end up? What's success look like? So again, on most farms that we're walking onto, bacteria dominant, right? So we go in and we'll look at the amount of total life, and it tends to be on the low end. And then we look at it and we'll have 90% bacteria to 10% fungi. Again, a healthy teaspoon of soil should have 1 billion living bugs in it. a lot of what we see has a small fraction of that. So over this journey, you're going to get that biodiversity. You're going to get that higher population. It's going to convert into organic matter. You're going to see that organic material turning into good topsoil. You're going to have obviously less losses of your nutrients because we're trapping them inside of our biology. You're going to see that efficient uptake of nutrients. You're going to see your compaction go away. You're going to see disease resistance. There's just so many good things that unfold from having that healthy soil. So one of the things that has been really important to us is not just for you to take, our word for it or to think you saw it in the field. So one of the critical things is everything I just discussed can be measured. And we have taken it upon ourselves to be in the field on your farm, actually measuring these things. So we're bringing the technology to you at no cost as part of being our partner in this journey. One of those pieces is a real-time soil probe. So we're actually going to come to your farm and we'll do real-time soil testing. It's a full soil test, gives you all your micros and macros, but it also will give you your compaction. So we can monitor how we're opening your soil over time. It's going to give you your pH. It's going to give you your CECs. We're going to look at your organic material. And are we improving that organic matter? We're going to look at the carbon in your soil. So all those pieces, we know exactly from the device where we did it, so we can come back multiple times over multiple seasons and actually verify in the same location, are we making progress? We also will sit on our tailgate and do something that's called a microbiometer, and that actually goes in and measures the amount of carbon life in your soil. And that ratio of fungi to bacteria. So how many predators are there versus the bacteria? And again, we will constantly show that we're moving that percentage in a positive way where the fungi percentages are going up and their bacteria are coming down to where we're getting a much more balanced working system. And then as we get further into the season, we then do real-time tissue samples. So right where we took a soil sample and we have nutrients in the ground, we're now verifying those nutrients are actually getting into the plant. And we'll do that where Holganix is versus where you have a check. And we'll show you that the Holganix allows that plant to perform at a higher level. So I asked the question, when is a good time to start improving your soil? So to me, this picture is probably the most precious picture we have ever taken. That t-shirt says Holganix, so there's a farm here for me. This is about legacy. This is about us building with you a farm that you can hand down that you know will be more productive than the farm that was given you. So I'm really excited about that. So I'm going to bridge now into testimonials and just some examples so you can see on the ground, how does this work? I think I mentioned in our application conversation that whether you can do it in furrow or you can do a broadcast spray. Everybody asks. That's fine, you can do it either way, but there's got to be a better way. Like, which one's better? I think most people come to the table thinking that it's probably in furrow, and I always say it doesn't matter, because the thing you have to think about is we're putting the seed stock down onto the soil, and then that plant is going to feed it, and it's going to multiply, and it's going to grow based on what that particular soil and plant needs. So we just need to get it to the soil. So in this particular farmer, again, I told him it didn't matter. He didn't trust me. So he went ahead and did one field broadcast sprayed, and he got 8.5 bushel. He went to his next field and he did that one in furrow and he got 8.3 bushel. So again, statistically no different. We see this all the time, but again, whatever works for you, we don't want you to make an extra pass. The next one I have up here that I want to share with you is a story that I was personally a part of. It's a really good company that you guys will all know in the space, but one of the senior executives did a trial for us, and he's just south of Des Moines, Iowa, and he had his own farm. And he said, I want to put, we're looking at microbial and biologic products. I'd like to put you out there with a competitor and see how you guys do. And this is the quote he came back when I got on the phone with him. He's like, hey, these guys gave me 7 different products. I had to do 4 different tissue samples throughout the year. I had to drip feed this stuff into my plants. And at the end of the day, the way I would summarize it was a flop. I just didn't see any real impact. Your product was much easier. It was cheaper. The application was easy. And I saw it in the health of the plant the whole year. And even before I get into the detail, Brian, he asked me if he could place an order for all of his ground. So in this particular growing season, he did his entire ground, 100% of his acres as a farmer with our product. It did give him 5 bushel. So obviously it did give him a good ROI, but more than that, he really saw the impact of the product and really felt powerfully that this was, in his words, a very special product. So we talked about a journey. So this is some data. This is a 30-year user of our product. So again, every year you're going to continue to build your biology and you're going to have a stronger and stronger soil and that system working for you. So this is by year 3, 6 different fields. And if you average across that between the check and where Holganix had been for 3 seasons, we're about a 31 bushel average on the corn that was improved there. The health of the plant, you can visually see it, but we also flew the drone here, and this is just a great example. First year user, Northern Iowa, and you can just see on the Holganix side of the field how much healthier it is. We have stay green. This is consistent, and a lot of people tell us how green their corn is, and it stays that way all the way through. So we will tend to dry down green versus die down. And so again, it's very visual, but it's really just showing you a healthy plant. Everybody's got cool yield pictures. We've got our own, but again, people see different responses based on their reality, but we consistently show value to our grower, healthier plant, better yields, and a real ROI. I mentioned the next example here earlier, and this is a really good visual example where if you look at the picture on the right, you can see bug pressure. You can see that honestly was a weaker plant. We measured that with Brix. So that was a 4.0 on the Brix scale, and that tells you how much sugar is in the sap of that plant. Our side with Holganix, it was 5.5, so it's a much healthier plant, and bugs don't like that. So again, they're gonna go find that weaker plant to feed on versus feeding on ours. But the other thing below that I wanna point out is that line number 3 comes from a microbiometer. So when we first entered this field on the control side, we had a reading of 95. Now that is the amount of carbon life in that soil on a scale from 0 to 1800. On the other side where we put Holganix, we're up to 207. So again, we more than doubled the amount of living carbon life in that soil. But the real cool part about it is the ratio of what was actually growing. So when we got there, it was 8% fungi to 92% bacteria. By the middle of the season, it was 28% fungi to 72. So again, we're getting that ratio better. We're getting the predators up. We're getting the soil to work for that farmer. We work really good with manures, right? So this is a great picture, but again, you think about how manure works and the digestive tract of your livestock is there's not enough oxygen as it goes through that system. And so what you have in manure is a lot of biology, but it tends to be all bacteria because the fungi and the protists are oxygen based and they don't make it through the system. So you have a lot of biology, it's bacteria dominant, and you've got a lot of great nutrients. So we have farmers that have been putting that down year after year. We show up, we add all these predators to the system, and all of a sudden things really start to unlock. We're really isolating and we're helping stimulate those roots, and really just look at the size of the stalk on that. It just really makes a significant difference. The other thing we saw a lot this year, and it's been pretty consistent, is growth. So we tend to be a growth stage or 2 ahead. So these 2 were planted within 24 hours, but you can see we're significantly further on the growth stages. So later in the season, you're giving more time for that maturity of that ear and really to build it out. This is a bean field, custom sprayer. He was supposed to do half the field. He did it in a very interesting way. He decided to stripe it versus just do half and half. It ended up being an awesome photo for us, so we'll take it. But this just shows Holganix staying green versus the other starting to dry down. Again, makes it a little bit challenging to harvest, but it was kind of a fun picture. Everybody, again, like I said, has great yield, but I think I want you to look at the roots here, right? So if you look at the nodules, we tend to see 3 or 4 times more nodulization on our beans, better roots. That ultimately translates into better yields. And then field results from actually getting out. Like I said, we want to measure this stuff. So this is, an example of how we go at giving you a report after we visited your field. So again, you can see here, there'll be the traditional soil test results, which again, for us is really important to say, how are we looking at unlocking and making those nutrients available from the control versus Holganix? But then on the other side is the microbial levels, right? So again, showing where were you to start with? Are we growing that microbial population? And is that fungi percentage going in the right direction? So again, this is the kind of information year to year to year that we want to be sharing with you so that you're seeing this journey unfold. A lot of people say, what soil does it work on? And we honestly are one of the rare ones, I think, that say, put us on your worst dirt first, right? So let's actually go help you where you maybe need it the most. But this is a great example where even on some really good soil, right? This is 266 bushel on the control side. We were able to step into that and still make a big difference and get them up to 274. This is more probably what a lot of people are used to, more middle of the ground. So 144 to 163, that's a big increase, right? So the net impact on that little bit tougher soil, again, we tend to see percentage-wise a bigger impact, and we really get excited when we have that for our customers. This is a grower who did a spring application, fall application, another spring application leading into this growing season. So he's kind of got 3 applications in, reduced his fertilizers by 30% between his NPK, put 160 pounds of total nitrogen down. And again, you'll see there 250 bushel, 230 bushel. So very significant yields, but compared to Czech, he gained 20 bushel across his fields with that pullback in his input cost. So this is a great visual. This is a partner of mine. He got into this with me because he was tired of 60 bushel beans. For 20 years, he'd been raising 60 bushel beans. And so he wanted to show me his first season after applying our application, what the difference was. And he's driving through his field from one end to the other, and he's in the 90s. He said he'd never seen that. On the other side, it was a good year, and this was not this growing season, this is last, and it's sitting in the mid 70s. So he ended that season at over 72 bushel average. He just wrapped up this season and he broke 80 this year. So he went from the 60 that he didn't like so much up to 70, which is excited. And by year 3, he was over 80. So again, very excited about the progress that we can show from one season to the next season to the next season. If you have more information, you'd like to see some data, we've got some great third-party trials and some other things, please go to bio800plus.com, and I really do appreciate your time.